test. What percentage of your revenue comes from the top 20% of your client base? If you answered more than half, keep watching. Back in the late 19th century, an Italian economist called Vilfredo Pareto noticed that in his garden, around 20% of his pea pods were generating 80% of the peas. This led him on a journey in which he then developed an economic theory which said that 20% of the Italian landowners owned 80% of the land. This has since become known as the Pareto principle or the 80-20 rule, except it's not a rule as such. In fact, it's something much more interesting. Our research indicates that around 2/3 of Australian companies generate at least 60% of their revenues from the top 20% of their customers. Let's say your company has annual turnover of $10 million and you've got 1,000 clients. If you're like a lot of Australian companies, that means that around $6 million of your revenue comes from 200 of your clients. And this is where it gets interesting. The 80-20 principle is an example of what mathematicians think of as a fractal. That is, it retains its shape as it's magnified. So if 60% comes from 20%, then 60% of the 60% comes from 20% of the 20%, and so on. 60% of the $6 million comes from 20% of the 200 customers. Around $3.6 million in revenue, therefore, is derived from 40 customers. Now take that one step further. 60% of the 3.6 million is $2.16 million, and 20% of the 40 customers is just 8 clients. So $2.16 million of revenue is being derived from just 8 of the 1,000 customers. Our research shows that most Australian companies think that they win a bit less than half of all the business from the top 20% of their clients, and that with more focused effort they could lift their share of wallet to 65% of the client's total business. That represents, by the way, an improvement in the revenue they generate from those clients of about 38%. Put that into dollars and cents. By focusing on the 8 clients that are generating $2.16 million in revenue, lifting the share of wallet to 65% represents an improvement of about $650,000. Now, in a $10 million company, that $650,000 is a 6.5% increase in the total top line from just 8 customers. Now, a couple of disclaimers. What we're saying is based on research, and you should absolutely check your own numbers to see if the Pareto principle holds true. And the second disclaimer is that revenue, of course, doesn't equal profit, but we're using revenue because it's easier to demonstrate the principle. However, there's a very good chance that 60% of your profit is generated from 20% of your clients. And per the example we've just talked about, around 21 or 22% of your profit comes from less than 1% of the customer base. Now, if you're building a balance sheet to get ready for sale, that kind of improvement is definitely worth consideration. Now, how do you do it? Well, watch our next video and we'll give you a couple of ideas.